Hello, this is Alan G. Davison, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 2 of my book that I actually self-published, The Blessed. And, let's see how many more little spelling errors, mistakes, and other grammatical errors that I've made over the years, shall we? Images of a pub flashed into his mind. A woman put her arms around him as he sat in a big chair. The smell of smoke filled his nose as faces blurred. Smoke? Smoke? Shouted Dayan as he sat up in his bed, his head spinning as he tried to figure out what was burning. Dayan leaped out of his torn covers as his head twisted, trying to find the source of the smell. The boy looked out of the cracked glass. The sky was filled with black smoke, and a cool red shaded the earth. He turned on his heels when he heard a shot from a basic rifle. Basic rifle? What is a basic rifle? Seriously. I mean, two friggin' words of bloody research, I could have had a better rifle on this entire thing. Basic rifle. I mean, it could have just been a gunshot. Screw critics. I could tear myself apart, apparently. He dashed out of his room, leaving the blanket on the cold ground. Floor probably would have been better. As he dashed out of it, and now I'm repeating myself. Dear God, this is terrible. Dashed into the main living room. And he saw his father staring out the window with an uncaring look. How in the world would he know what his father was like? I need an editor. Anyway, he saw his father staring out the window with an uncaring look on his face. Father, what's going on? His voice trailed off as his father dropped to his knees. Charred wounds in his father's back became visible. Dan leaped to his father's side, but all he could do is get his hands bloody. Dayan tried to keep his hands steady for his father's sake, but his hands fumbled and his father fell to the ground. As he tumbled, a small necklace dropped out of his father's hand as Dayan pushed his father onto his back. Dad! Dad! He choked a bit. Talk to me, Dad. You'll be fine. You told me just wrap around up a bit. Yeah, you'll be fine. Dayan rushed over to his bed as he grabbed his blankets. Quickly finding holes, he ripped the blanket up, wrapping his father as tightly as he could. He looked for a moment before clipping it around his own. The fuck was I trying to do? Then, out of the holes and cracks in the door, he saw light moving in the distance. The angels? Dayan glared while his hands unknowingly danced with lightning. His mind connected the dots. On instinct, he raised his hand towards the approaching trooper whose armor glowed as his scream filled the darkness. His hands stained with his father's blood. I want my father back! Dayan looked down at his hands. I want them all dead! He shouted as he forced himself to his feet. The shaking stopped. Dayan stared as lightning danced between the bodies, then to his own hands. He stared for a moment in fear, when the sounds of a screaming woman entered his ears. He dashed back into the house where a woman shot up from her bed and vanished. Dayan looked around in confusion, his mind forgetting his rage from a moment ago. Dayan leaped back as a brown cloaked figure appeared before him, and another scream ripped through the night. Dayan recognized the scream. Ready to help, he was faced with the vanishing woman now in the doorway. Get out of my way! Shouted Dayan, who tried to push past her as he walked to the door. She grabbed his wrist, twisted it, and slammed him onto the hard floor. Dayan glared hard. His lightning shot out at the attacker, but the woman was already gone. As Dayan got to his feet, lightning cracked and his cold anger grew. His eyes narrowed as he shook his hand. She appeared again at his side, delivering a cold punch as he toppled to his left. Then she appeared, slamming him a second time in front, delivering a brutal uppercut. Blood spilled from his jaw as Dayan fell on his back. His arms flailed out at his side. Dayan spit out blood as he dug his hands into the wood and looked up at the hooded figure. His hands surged with electricity as the figure vanished again. Dayan got back up, slow to his feet as his eyes darted around. He slowly backed into the wall, then dashed for his father's room, where he grabbed a simple handgun off of the dresser. Before he could use it, his wrist was grabbed and twisted, causing him to drop the weapon. The weapon rattled a second on the floor before he dropped after it. But it vanished before he hit the wood floor on recoil. The boy looked at the figure. The silver weapon aimed The figure had a long, worn cloak. The cloak shrouded everything with the exception of two hazel eyes that looked strikingly familiar. The boy knew enough that the wood wouldn't conduct electricity, but it could start a fire. He kept his face as his mind worked. The bolt zapped from his hand. The figure dropped the weapon as sparks flew and a fire started. The house went up like a match as the figure recoiled to guard and back off. The boy backed slowly into his own room as the fires burned at him. He turned. He has only escaped the window. Dayan leaped out, smashing out a window as the house went up like a giant. I think I said that already. Dayan rolled as he ripped off a bit of glass from his side. He stood up as he crouched, the figure walking out of the flames. Dayan glared at the figure when a familiar scream filled the night again. Dayan gave up all thought of the figure and ran off. The figure appeared in front of him. "I'm not done," said the faceless woman as she drew a sword. She also produced a rapier and tossed the blade at his feet. A question looked adorn the young man's face as he picked up the weapon. A surge of electricity charged through it. She held out her own as she charged while lightning coursed through his blade. He gripped the hilt with one hand as the figure charged. Dayan guarded as her blade slammed into his. Again and again, each time being pushed back, his blade held in a pitiful defense. "Attack!" ordered the figure, and after a moment of hesitation, he did so. He batted back. "More force. Keep your sword high," the figure directed as he soon picked up the basics, along with a few cuts on his arms and legs. Lightning ripped along the blade, but the figure would dodge just in the nick of time as the boy added his new profound talent to the blade. The figure weaved around the blade with little problems, and the lightning rod never came in contact. The boy fell back as he looked up at the figure, panting, and the figure vanished. And Dayan frowned. He got to his feet and then ran off in the direction of the town. Dayan went wide-eyed as he saw the entire town in flames. Even from a distance, he could see the flames reaching farther than the highest building. The entire area was surrounded by shining troops, each with black metal armor instead of the usual inspiring chrome. Dayan dashed off towards them, but the troops seemed to stand in place when shooting echoed in the town. Dayan dashed past the line surrounding the men. They didn't stir, but when he turned around, they shot at him. Dayan flinched as an electrical barrier formed around him in the town, and Dayan heard screams and, not questioning luck, turned to the closest building. The wood door gave way as Dayan called out into the flames. The night erupted into gunshot as the troops started to move in. "Shit, it's suppressing fire," growled the man. "Wait, Sheriff Tom?" commented Dayan in confusion. "What did you think I'd abandon this heap of wood? Even with a good size evacuator, they still got some people round up. Shit, I'd hope we wouldn't have to worry about these people with such a small population. We need to get out. They plan on blowing this place sky high. Dar, he needs to know that there is no one left. What about you? I'll stall for time. Now go, as this place will likely fall down around us if we keep talking." Dayan hesitated a moment. "Go already!" The figure turned and dashed out the front door. The town was up in flames as a small group of men circled around a group of dead bodies where two men fought. One giant, the other was the bearded man from earlier in the day. Alicia was on the ground next to him, nursing a wound on her arm. The rest of the angels crouched to the side as the man held a giant Gatling gun aimed at the bearded man. The bullets started off slow as he aimed at Dar. The bullets went at his own men, but were deflected off of some unseen force. The man danced around the bigger man, keeping low but keeping his body in the air, twisting with military precision. And the giant, feeling frustrated, tossed the gun as he pulled a large hammer off of his back. The giant charged forward as he swung the hammer around. He moved past the bearded man towards the girl behind him. Dayan's blood boiled as he charged even more electricity through his sword, which started to glow blue as lightning danced to the ground. He charged the bigger man. The bearded man made a quick motion with his hand, and Dayan stopped his charge in mid-strike. "What the heck?" Dayan asked as he looked down the street. "Keep back. This man is far too dangerous. I'll deal with him. You handle the followers. Just stay away from the hammer," ordered the man as he drew his blade, then a .45 caliber handgun in his left. "Ah, there we go. We're getting some creative guns in here now." What was I thinking? Basic rifle fire. I mean, seriously. Alright, now we're in his left. The giant swung his hammer around. The bearded man leaped onto the pole of the hammer. The bearded man slammed his knee into the giant's helmet. The man stumbled back as he growled in frustration, and the bearded man shot at the giant's head. The iron was even scratched as some unknown wasn't. Oh dear God. And they wonder why I'm so freaking sensitive about the idea of actually self-publishing another book under them, or even, continuing selling this thing. I swear, I couldn't sell this thing in my conscious mind, knowing how terrible some of this is. I mean, it's a really good story. A lot of people have told me so. Most of my friends, now that I actually think about it, but I enjoy it, and I really do like it, but to be blatantly honest, it's just not worth the bloody price tag. Anyway, Dane easily dealt with the brainless fools as each suit of black armor seemed to stand still and shoot, which did little good. Bad aim and brainless, said Dane. Dane quickly grabbed Alicia and half dragged her behind a few barrels, not in danger of catching fire. Dane turned his hand around the corner, shooting electricity blindly with the curve of his hand. Cool sword, said Alicia. The weapon remained at his side as the two hid behind the between bolts and gunfire. Weapon, like all of its kind, was a small-bladed one with a guarded hilt to protect the hand. The guard shone brightly as it twisted around in a thin weave, creating an integrated but natural guard that shone even in the dark. The blade was a technological marvel, taking the electricity and harnessing it instead of being destroyed, despite its unnatural glow. Some person gave it to me after kicking me around, muttered Dane as he wiped his face, remembering the blood. He looked over at his friend a quick moment and saw that she was in okay condition despite the cuts and torn clothing. Dane got back to his feet as his lightning was absorbed by some unknown bubble. Dane growled in frustration as he turned up more energy in his hand, not even sure how he was doing it. Alicia looked at his hand in admiration. Dane braced himself as he shot again and again until the bubble seemed to pop. As Dane shot one last bolt that made the soldier scream as he was knocked to the ground. The smoke filled Dane's nose, and he saw a rifle aimed at Alicia. He grabbed her by the shoulder and in one fluid motion shot a fist filled with lightning as the bubble shattered and the unfortunate soldier screamed to join the other. As Dane's fifth opponent fell, 7 others drew their weapons and started towards, as the giant slammed his hammer into the ground, causing everyone to stumble. With a sudden distraction, Dane was able to get in close and attack with his new rapier. Dane was silently impressed as his blade cleaved the soldier's head clean off. "Bastard, stand still!" shouted the giant under his helmet, as the bearded man ducked again. "Above average military armor, below average in human intelligence," muttered the man. "Just my luck." The bearded man continued as he leaped above a second swing and fired another round as he flew over using the force to get free of the giant's reach. Dane held his blade out in front of him as 6 figures formed around the burning rail area. Dane charged forward, swung at a soldier. His blade danced with lightning. I really do like that word, don't I? Danced. I like dance, don't I? Apparently I do. I use it a lot when describing the electricity. Where was I again? A blade danced with light. The swing missed, but the lightning caught anyway, and the man was fried. Another soldier leaped at Dane, who overpowered the soldier's shield with lightning, which sent him sailing through the air and into a burning building. Dane backed away slowly, caught between flames and the 4 remaining soldiers, while Alicia pressed up against his back to escape the heat. Dane felt the flames lick at him as Alicia pressed closer, almost digging into his skin with her nails. His frustration boiled over as everything covered in metal became one giant lightning rod. All the bodies fried as the giant sparked with electricity as he continued to swing away, but was otherwise unharmed. Before you ask, I do have an explanation for this. It's later on in the story, okay? Don't get your panties in a bunch. Alright, lightning rod. Otherwise unharmed. Dane collapsed as Alicia tried to help him away from the dead bodies and burning buildings. Dropping in the dirt as the bearded man fought on. The giant tossed his hammer back over his shoulder as his fist became spiked. The giant charged forward, his spiked fist aimed at the bearded man's head. In one motion, the bearded man grasped the giant's hands and flung him into the air. The bearded man leapt up after his opponent and unloaded a round of bullets at the giant, who slammed into the earth, creating a small crater. He roared at the bearded man in front of him as he took out two smaller hammers and charged Dare, who dove under them and slammed his fist into the giant's armored gut. The helmet shifted back down into the armor as he spit up blood while glaring at the smaller man. The giant noticed Dain and Alicia attempting to run past him. The giant dropped his hammers and grabbed Alicia in one hand and Dain in the other and proceeded to toss them into the wooden tower of the burning building. The burning building started to collapse after a moment as the burning wood gave way. Alicia screamed in fear as the flames started to drop around. "No!" yelled the bearded man as he raised his hands up in front of him. The building bits stopped in midair as parts fell down around the two. With a quick motion, the bearded man tossed it at the giant, who growled in rage as he battered some of the debris into the sheriff's office. The giant looked at what was left of the troops and growled. The giant pointed at the bearded man. After giving a quick motion with one hand across his own neck, he turned to run as one of the other buildings collapsed, blocking any attempt to follow. The man growled in frustration as the burning rubble. Man frowned. Then another building started to collapse. "Look out!" shouted Dain as the bearded man turned to the falling building. Man put both hands out in front of him as the burning wood suddenly stopped. "Holy crap! He's a blast!" The man's face twitched as the building was slowly pushed away. The building was released and crashed down, knocking up ash and dust. The man quickly ran over to the pair and motioned for them to follow him. "If we stay here, we'll suffocate from all the smoke," said Darius, as he raised his hands to the man's pack floated over to him. Dain coughed up as the three ran out of the burning town. Dain looked back at the last of the building, collapsed, and noticed the body of the sheriff still not too far out in front of the town. Dain bowed his head in a quick moment as an explosion rocked the night. The group disappeared into the darkness as the black troops melted into memory. Alicia started to stumble, but Dain picked her up bridle. Why did I say bridle? That doesn't. No, bridle is actually bridle style. He continued running after the bearded man. The group continued on without meeting any more troops, and after the fire seemed like embers in the distance, Dar finally stopped. The bearded man looked tired as he tossed a large blanket at the two as the night began to fall. They sat together around a fire, watching the burning town in the distance become a cloud of smoke. Dain and Alicia huddled under the surprisingly warm blanket. Alicia leaned on him as she drifted to sleep. Dain, on the other hand, couldn't, as Alicia's black hair smelled heavy with smoke. So he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small chain with a ring on it that his father had dropped earlier. "Mom," thought Dain, as he looked over at the bearded man, who fell asleep as well. But even in sleep seemed respectable. Dain wrapped his arm around Alicia and waited for the sun to rise. Dain rose first, having fallen asleep sometime in the night. The bearded man gave out a low groan, now awake and facing the sun away from the dying fire. As he twisted on the ground, the figure from last night appeared before them, and Dain fingered his blade as the figure held out her hands in a gesture of surrender. The bearded man suddenly appeared behind her, his blade near her neck. "Hello, Lieutenant Darius Henson," she said, smiling, and Dain looked at the man in shock. "What the heck is going on here?" Dain said in shock as he looked at Darius, surprise evident even on his face. Well, that was a quick read. Not really. Anyway, that brings us up to page number 28. Overall, that is the first three chapters, and to be honest, I've written worse. Overall, these first three chapters, prologue in chapters 1 and 2, were, I had really little idea what we were actually planning for the rest of the actual story. And despite the fact that I actually went back and rewritten the prologue to be a little bit more interesting and in-depth of the events, and I had a little bit more fun with it, not very much has actually changed based off of that. There were some things that actually in the first three chapters that I wanted to implement later on, but I never really did. Main thing would be Dain and having the trouble with the bullies. I was planning on bringing those characters back later on for the first book, but inconsequential, actually. I sort of actually forgot about them while writing this book, since it actually took about 2 years to actually write the entire thing. And to be blatantly honest, I clearly suck with editing, as I've already pointed out quite a few of my own little flaws. Well, that's chapter 2, and stick